Hello and welcome. This is the beginning of a new series of videos I'll be making to talk about how to optimize Destiny 2. Now many of you don't know who I even am, but my name is Mekabre, and I've been playing Destiny 2 since the very beginning. Many would say that it's a full-time job for me. However, one without any income, perhaps beyond a large number of exotics, if that even counts. One last thing about myself before we get started, if you're willing to subscribe or come join me over on Twitch, that would be awesome. I make a lot of Destiny content, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you. Now let's jump into the topic of today's video, the first in the series of optimizing Destiny 2, loadouts and third-party apps. If you were to ask almost any of the friends that I play Destiny 2 with, a number of them would tell you I have a phrase, but that isn't optimal, ... Now, of course, it often doesn't really matter when it comes to the activity that we're doing, but I very much enjoy optimizing the living hell out of this game and ensuring that I can be the best guardian possible. Inside the endgame of Destiny 2, optimizing the game can allow for a smoother playing experience and allows you to really excel in a number of different areas. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the basics surrounding loadouts and third-party apps, as these are amazing tools when it comes to optimizing the game. So let's get started. The first third-party website / app we're going to look at is Destiny 2 Armor Picker. And this is an amazing third-party website, and it can help you create the perfect build. All you need to do is select the exotic armor piece you want and the stats you're looking to have for your build, and it'll spit out a number of combinations you can use to ensure you're meeting those standards. Now this tool is all about helping you be optimal, and simply put, it takes a bit of time to create that perfect build. So a number of us look towards content creators for that perfect build, and we're trying to copy and paste as much as possible. And don't get me wrong, that's the whole point. Content creators want people to use their builds. So perhaps you're trying to get triple 100 stats, or even just using a build with this specific exotic armor piece. This website is definitely something you can use. So, for an example, let's take Gerfalcon's on Void Hunter. We know that the weapon side of things isn't going to take too much because all you need is a Void weapon. We know we need Gerfalcons, and then let's say the content creator we were watching recommended 100 mobility, so you can have maximum time on your invisibility, and 100 resilience, as well as maybe let's say 80 discipline instead of triple 100s, because not everyone can reach that standard. Now, these are recommended stats, and we have a baseline. We know which exotic chest piece we are going to use. We put all of this information to Destiny 2 Armor Picker, and it'll spit out which legendary armor pieces we can use to reach these standards. And boom, we're done. All we have to do is grab those in-game, equip them, level them up if necessary, and then we're just going to watch the guide that the content creator had made with that specific build, and we're going to take the mods on each piece of armor and equip them as we see. And we're done. We now have a brand new build in a matter of seconds, and we didn't even have to really take the time to work out what we needed to put on each to reach the stats. And that is amazing. Overall, this tool allows a large amount of assistance in showing combinations of armor, and it lets you reach desired stats for your character using that specific exotic armor piece, which is always a good thing. Moving on, we're going to talk about by far the biggest tool any Destiny 2 player can use when optimizing the game, and that's none other than DIM, or Destiny Item Manager. This website and app is very useful for a number of reasons. Let's start with the first and most widely known portion that I'm sure a number of you already use it for: weapon pulling and storing. Now, in Destiny 2, we have a vault as well as a postmaster, and oftentimes weapons get stuck on one or the other. Not even mentioning, sometimes they're on another character. And DIM is essentially a portable vault for all of your weapons and armor. And it includes all three characters. If you ever need a weapon that was stuck on another character or in the vault, you can simply pull it from that character or vault onto your current character. And it takes all but a few seconds, and voila, you now have that weapon. Now, this tool is great for quick weapon transfers, but there's another function that I think is arguably more important than that, and that's the loadout function. Now, you might be calling me crazy because we have in-game loadouts, and we're definitely going to talk about those as well as the interaction they have with DIM loadouts momentarily. But before we do that, let's talk about why DIM loadouts by themselves are still very useful in this day and age. Let's start with one case that is likely to happen again, just knowing the state of Bungie and Destiny 2 as a whole. Loadouts were once disabled due to a number of bugs that they had caused. And if you hadn't backed up or saved your loadouts on DIM, all the loadouts in-game were locked and unable to be used. And I don't know about you, but I did not back up those loadouts, and that caused a lot of pain, and I just kind of suffered through using builds that were really outdated or old. But now, because I've been through this once, I have it updated where all the builds that I frequently use and that are on my in-game loadouts are now saved to DIM. Now, there's another thing. A lot of PvP players love to use different weapons, and while I may be a PvE main, so I don't take the time to save a bunch of PvP loadouts, I do have a few, but they're all on DIM. When I like a weapon, I use it a lot, and on DIM you can set with specific weapons, specific mods, and armor pieces, just like you can in game. Now, of course, the great thing about PvP loadouts is typically you're not changing in the middle of a match. And if you are, it's going to be comp or trials. And it's very, very small changes, perhaps going from a hand cannon to a pulse rifle as you find you need more range. Now, while DIM can't help you in that regard, what it can help you with is you can set a loadout for every single weapon you frequently use inside the game for PvP. Make one for a sidearm build, where you're using a sidearm and a sniper. Make one for your hand cannon shotgun. So on and so forth, and it's super, super simple to do. Now, in-game, we have 10 loadouts, and this limits us. In DIM, we have as many as we would like, and I recommend fully using that. Now let's move into how DIM loadouts and in-game loadouts interact, and some useful ways you can use both to optimize your playtime inside Destiny 2. Now, let me start with a little bit of a preface on this one. This portion of optimizing Destiny 2 is very specific to players that find themselves doing the same activity a number of times. Now, some great examples of this would be a team that is speedrunning a raid, or perhaps a team that is low manning a raid as well. Any sort of activity where those two things are used, you're going to find yourself changing your loadouts based on the needs of that raid or dungeon even. Now, DIM loadouts allow you to pull more than one weapon, and I'm not just talking about kinetic energy and heavy. For example, in a raid scenario, you might find that you need not only an eager-edged sword, but a rocket and maybe even a machine gun, depending on the encounter you're in. Now, a good player might already have these on their character, but a speedrunner might decide that they're going to make a DIM loadout using those three heavies and pull those weapons to their character before they go into the speedrun practice or trial, whatever it may be. Now, you can do this for every slot on your weapons, and you can do this for armor. For example, if you know you're going to need multiple exotic chest pieces, or boots, or whatever it may be, and you don't want them on your character all the time because they're specific to this one or two activities that you do, you can make a DIM loadout and label it Root of Nightmare Speedrun. And now you know what it's for, and you are going to place all the weapons that you use in that speedrun, and nothing more. Now, clear all the other weapons and all the other armor from your character, and you're going to create that DIM loadout, pull those weapons to you. Now we're going to transfer to in-game, and we're going to make our in-game loadouts based on the encounter or the portions in between that we know we're going to need. For example, in Root of Nightmares, first encounter is not all that difficult and really does not require many choices of exotic armor or build specific things, but is based largely on speed alone if you're looking at something like a speedrun. So Eager Edge and Heat Rises on your Warlock with something like Transversive Steps is very, very common. Maybe something like Forbearance, as well as an exotic trace rifle sitting in your kinetic slot to ensure that you can hit the nodes, have good ad clear, and have good movement. All of these things create your first loadout. Now, moving on from there, let's jump forward to Explicator, where you know it's heavily damage based. But not only is it heavily damage based if you're doing something like low man or even speedrun, and you're looking for heavy ammo to ensure you can have sword ammo after the encounter, or if, like I said, if it's a low man, to ensure you have enough heavy ammo to kill the boss, you might need something like your Aeons equipped. There's loadout number 2. But you need something for damage, so as a warlock, you might be running Rain of Fire or Lunafaction boots or whatever it may be. There's loadout number 3 or even 4 at this point if you have something strictly for ad clear. Now, we know the weapons we're going to need for these builds, and we can make these builds inside in the game itself, and now we're using both tools in tandem. We're using the dim loadouts to get the weapons on our character ahead of time, and we're using the in-game loadouts to change our loadouts based on the encounter or the section of the raid that we are in at that given moment. And they work very, very well together. Now, like I said, this isn't going to be for everyone, and by no means do you have to do this for normal activities, but it's something that's going to totally help optimize your game, and especially if you're looking at getting into speedrunning or low mans, this is something I can't recommend enough, as it allows everything to be super smooth, and all the weapons and armor that you need are ready to go because you made a dim loadout, and then you've created loadouts in-game specific to that activity. Now, without trying to keep you here for too long, the last topic we're going to talk about today, and by far the most important, is the in-game loadouts by themselves. Now, if you're not using this tool, what are you doing? This is something Bungie gave us, and it works extraordinarily well. In-game loadouts allow you to swap between subclasses, weapons, fragments, armor pieces, armor mods, and a number of other things. Not to mention, even just the fashion, if that's what you're looking for. But in-game loadouts are a key part to optimizing how you play Destiny 2. Now, in today's video, I'm not going to try and step on the toes of some topics in other videos too much, so we're going to focus on 2 big portions of this. The first is, what are your loadouts and why are they different? Let's start and explain and breaking this down little by little. The first part, what are your loadouts? It's going to depend largely on what you play inside the game. Myself, I find I'm often doing raids and GM nightfalls. Little to nothing else in between. Now, this is character dependent for sure, but with most of my time being spent on Warlock, that means I'm often on Well. So I have a number of solar loadouts revolving around Well. But each one offers something unique and something specific to the raids or the activities, the GM nightfalls that I am doing. Now, a great example of this, I have a Sunbracers build that I absolutely love to use in almost any sort of content. It gives me my well back super fast, it's efficient ad clear, there's decent boss damage. Overall, it's very well rounded. So it's my all-purpose solar build. But additionally, like I just said, I'm typically the Solar Warlock on the raid team. And this means that I need to have a strictly damage set up for that Solar Warlock. And not always is Sunbracers a valid strategy, but it also doesn't always help the team. Something like Lunafactions or Rain of Fire, or maybe even if I'm pellet swapping, I'm using Ophidian aspects. There's a number of other exotics that are going to both assist my damage and assist the team's damage. And I need to make sure that I'm using those appropriately when damage starts. So I have a loadout that swaps nothing but armor and maybe a weapon or two, ensuring that the fragments and aspects, as well as the super, are all the same. Now, you might be saying, okay, what's the big deal with this? Well, there's a couple things. First, ensure that your fragments and aspects, as well as super, are the same. If you do not do this, and you switch loadouts in-game, let's say I had well, but I changed a fragment or an aspect, and I switch, I now not only don't have well, but I have 0 abilities as well, which is stupid. And it's something that I hope maybe one day Bungie will fix, but I understand why they haven't and probably won't. But you need to make sure they're all the same so you can swap from your ad clear section of an encounter to the damage section of an encounter and still have your super ready to go. Now, I said weapons sometimes. Some great examples of this, and we'll talk more about this in another video, but going from a trace rifle to something like a shotgun, you're not going to miss out on much ammo loss, which is a great thing. You want to ensure you have full ammo. However, switching from something like a linear fusion into a rocket, you're going to see a very large loss of ammo. Now, these are two great things to think about. The armor side of things is another important portion to this, but this goes well beyond just going from a normal add clear section of an encounter and a boss section of an encounter. If you find that your build is switching from one set of weapons and armor pieces to another, but your fragments and aspects and super are all the same, you can now switch to have surges that are going to boost your weapon damage as people pop their supers when it's damage time, and you're going to be picking up those orbs. So if you weren't running surges because you didn't need to, now you can switch to triple solar surge if you're running your Apex Predator, or Galahorn for that matter. The other part of this is switching exotic armor pieces like I had mentioned earlier. Going from something like Sunbracers onto Lunafaction boots allow you to have efficient ad clear when that's necessary, but also assist your team in outputting the max damage that they can when it is time for damage. This is super important and one of the easiest things you can do. What I recommend is whatever class you frequently find yourself using in scenarios like dungeons and raids, have your ad clear section or your multi-purpose section, and then have a loadout for your strictly damage focused as well. A lot of classes have really easy things to switch to. For Hunter, whatever your exotic is to make your build work. Earlier we had talked about Gerfalcons. Use your Gerfalcons. But then, the minute damage starts, or right before even, if you have time, switch to something like Star Eater Scales. Or maybe the Mobius Quiver Boots. I can't think of their name off the top of my head. But those are two great options for Hunters. Maybe you're on Solar. Put on Nighthawk. Titans, you have it easy with two amazing options. Whether it's Kyr's or whether it's Pyrogales. Both great instant swaps, and then you can go back to whatever you're using, whether it's Synthos, whether it's Lorelei. It doesn't matter, but these are easy swaps to make for increased damage, and it allows your build to feel better on the ad clear sections, and allows your damage to feel better when it's time for damage. You're not sacrificing anything beyond going into your inventory and switching loadouts for the matter of 30 seconds that might take, which if it's taking 30 seconds, you're probably on an old gen console, and hopefully you get an upgrade soon. But it takes a couple seconds to do, and it's really easy to do, and this is by far one of the most important things to optimize. Now, like I said, these are some wonderful tools at your disposal that I hope I made a little more aware to you if you didn't already know about all of them. And like I said, obviously not all of these things are going to apply to everybody. Some of these are very specific to speedrunning and low-man content, but just know these are great tools that anyone can use no matter what you're doing inside Destiny 2, and it will help optimize your playtime and take a little less away from sitting in your inventory stuck on, oh, I need to switch this armor piece and switch this weapon and that weapon, and more time spent playing the game, which is something we all want. Don't be that guy that's stuck in your inventory for a solid 5 minutes before every encounter and after every single wipe. Be that guy that came ahead of time, made their loadouts, had their dim loadout set ready to go, and was ready to fly through the raid with every single loadout ready to go for every single possibility or an encounter, and they just knew what they were doing. Be that guy. Be the guy that optimizes their loadouts and uses third-party apps. In the next video, we'll be discussing the next topic about how to optimize Destiny 2. Keep an eye out for that. And until then, get back to grinding, you crazy Guardians.